United States and the infinite debt opens with a contradiction that almost no one wants to face. The world's most powerful currency is not strong because it is stable, disciplined, or balanced, but because it is permanently unbalanced. You were taught that debt is a weakness, that living beyond your means leads to collapse, and that endless borrowing is a sign of failure. Yet the United States did the opposite. It built an empire not by paying its bills, but by never paying them. United States and the infinite debt is not a story about irresponsibility. It is a story about design. The system that sustains the dollar empire does not fear collapse because collapse itself has been engineered into a controlled cycle that benefits those closest to the source of money. Long before you were born, long before the current headlines about deficits and ceilings, an invisible architecture was already shaping how wealth flows upward and risk flows downward. Soldiers fight wars believing they defend freedom. Workers save believing money is stored safely. Voters argue over budgets believing restraint still matters, while something else operates quietly in the background. United States and the infinite debt links past and present through a moral asymmetry that almost never appears on balance sheets. Those who create money never repay it, and those who use money spend their lives trying to catch up. You are not outside the system. You are inside it, moving with it, dependent on it, measured by it. And the question is not whether this structure will end, but what happens to those who believe it cannot. This is macro threshold, where money, power, and history converge. United States and the infinite debt becomes clearer when the illusion is finally stated plainly. The global financial order does not run on savings, productivity, or even trust. It runs on a single mechanism that turns obligation into leverage. The cause is simple, but rarely acknowledged. When the issuer of the world's reserve currency can borrow in its own unit, it never faces the same constraints as everyone else. The effect is equally direct. Debt stops being a temporary tool and becomes the core product of the system itself, expanding endlessly because repayment is neither expected nor required. The consequence is structural dominance. Nations must earn or borrow dollars. Corporations must transact in dollars. Commodities are priced in dollars. Crises are resolved with dollars. One historical moment exposed this reality in full view. In 1971, when the United States severed the last formal link between the dollar and gold, the currency did not collapse, it expanded. What should have been a limit became an accelerator. From that point forward, United States and the infinite debt was no longer an accident of politics. It was the operating logic of the global system. The world adapted not because it agreed, but because there was no alternative. Debt grew, markets deepened, and power consolidated. The mirror is unavoidable. The system survives because it must, and it must because everyone depends on it. United States and the infinite debt is not abstract when you place a human life inside it. You begin in a moment of optimism. Credit is cheap, opportunity feels endless, and the future appears manageable. Growth accelerates, assets rise, confidence turns into certainty. You borrow not out of desperation, but because it feels rational. Everyone else is doing the same. Excess follows quietly. Risk is rebranded as innovation. Warnings are dismissed as outdated thinking. Then something shifts. Rates move. Liquidity tightens. What once felt light becomes heavy. Payments grow faster than income. Options narrow. The rupture does not arrive as chaos, but as pressure. Small sacrifices first, then irreversible ones. Collapse rarely looks dramatic from the inside. It feels administrative. Accounts are restructured. Promises are revised. Losses are socialized. The echo is what remains long after the numbers are written off. Careers reset. Generations recalibrate expectations. You are told it was necessary, unavoidable, systemic. United States and the infinite debt does not destroy everyone equally. It filters pain downward while preserving the architecture above it. United States and the infinite debt repeats itself across empires, each time wearing a different uniform. The first pattern appears when a dominant power discovers it can finance expansion without immediate cost. Military reach grows, obligations multiply, and confidence peaks. Tension builds as the currency spreads faster than the real economy beneath it. Irony arrives when strength itself becomes the justification for excess. The reckoning does not come from invasion, but from dilution. Trust erodes silently. El patrón no cambia, solo cambia el nombre del imperio. United States and the infinite debt appears again when institutions promise stability while quietly rewriting the rules. Citizens are told the system is sound, even as emergency measures become permanent. The mini-hook is reassurance. The tension is dependency. The irony is that rescue becomes routine. Each intervention saves the present by mortgaging the future. The structure survives, but legitimacy thins. El patrón no cambia, solo cambia el nombre del imperio. United States and the infinite debt emerges a third time when decline is disguised as modernization. Debasement is reframed as flexibility. Central authority expands under the banner of coordination. The public is invited to adapt. not question. Collapse is postponed, not avoided. The empire does not fall. It stretches until it can no longer recognize itself. El patrón no cambia, solo cambia el nombre del imperio. United States and the infinite debt reaches its apex when the central truth is finally spoken aloud. The dollar empire is sustained not by repayment, but by the impossibility of repayment. Infinite debt is not a flaw. It is the feature that forces global participation. Every deficit becomes someone else's surplus. Every crisis becomes justification for expansion. The pause you feel now is recognition. The system does not ask whether it should continue, only how far it can extend before belief fractures. United States and the infinite debt is not waiting for collapse. It is waiting for acceptance. United States and the infinite debt is no longer a historical abstraction, a theoretical model, or a warning buried in academic language. It is the operating condition of the present, so embedded in daily life that it no longer announces itself as extraordinary. You see it in the casual way trillion-dollar deficits are introduced, debated briefly, and then absorbed into expectation. You see it in emergency measures that arrive framed as temporary responses and quietly solidify into permanent infrastructure. You see it in markets that no longer ask what is being produced, but what will be supported, signaled, rescued, or tolerated. The past did not vanish. It scaled. What once unfolded across centuries of imperial rise and decay now compresses into decades, sometimes years. United States and the infinite debt does not need spectacle to function. It needs normalization. And normalization is achieved when repetition dulls alarm. United States and the infinite debt implicates you not because of consent, but because participation is compulsory. You do not opt into the currency that prices your labor, your housing, your education, and your future obligations. You inherit it. You move within it. You measure yourself against benchmarks it defines. Savings lose meaning not overnight, but gradually, as purchasing power erodes, while asset values climb beyond reach. Wages lag not because effort declined, but because the system rewards proximity to money creation more than contribution to production. Stability becomes something managed through narratives, interventions, and timing, rather than something felt in daily life. United States and the infinite debt binds generations together through obligations they never approved, liabilities they never authorized, and risks distributed asymmetrically by design. The pressure of the system is real, but it is diffused so evenly that it rarely produces a single moment of rupture. Instead, it produces fatigue. United States and the infinite debt connects the logic of empire to the psychology of the present. Expansion is no longer debated as a choice. It is treated as a necessity. When growth slows, more debt is justified. When crises emerge, more liquidity is released. When imbalances widen, they are reframed as transition phases. The system does not promise resolution, it promises continuity. And continuity is maintained by ensuring that the cost of expansion is deferred into the future, displaced across borders, or absorbed by those with the least leverage to refuse it. United States and the infinite debt survives by preventing pressure from concentrating in one visible place. When stress is everywhere, accountability is nowhere. United States and the infinite debt forces a collective mirror rather than offering an escape. What does it mean to live inside a structure where permanence depends on imbalance, where sustainability is achieved only through acceleration? What does it mean when discipline is moralized for households while exceptions are engineered for institutions? When restraint is demanded from citizens, but declared impossible for the issuer of the currency itself? These are not radical questions. They are ancient ones. History asks them of every empire that reaches a point where its money becomes more symbolic than real, more political than economic. United States and the infinite debt does not require belief to function. It requires acceptance. Skepticism can exist. Criticism can circulate. As long as participation continues, the structure holds. United States and the infinite debt is felt most clearly in the quiet adjustments people make without naming them. Expectations shrink. Time horizons shorten. Risk becomes unavoidable rather than optional. The future is no longer something planned. It is something hedged against. This is how systems endure beyond their moral justification. Not through force, but through adaptation. Populations learn to survive within constraints that were never openly declared. United States and the infinite debt does not announce its costs, it distributes them. It does not collapse loudly, it stretches silently. United States and the infinite debt closes the loop back to its origin without adding new revelations. Empires insist their money is eternal. Institutions insist control is necessary. Populations adapt until adaptation becomes exhaustion. Structures endure until belief thins just enough to matter. This is not a call to panic, rebellion, or withdrawal. It is a call to perception. If money reveals the hidden price of power, then watching how debt expands reveals exactly how power intends to preserve itself. United States and the infinite debt remains unfinished, not because its ending is unknown, but because its ending depends on how long the world continues to accept the trick that sustains the dollar empire.